Hey guys, recently I was asked how to transition from a beginner training program to an intermediate training program. Most beginner training programs have a training frequency of about 3 times a week and they use whole body workouts. This advanced training stage, it can make sense to increase the training frequency. And actually intermediate training programs are the only programs where I could recommend a body part split. You know, this typical bodybuilder split you can find lots of programs with online. The reason for this is that when you are a complete beginner, you have a really long anabolic window. This means you grow for up to 72 hours after the workout. However, the more advanced you get, the shorter this anabolic window becomes. So for example, like 2 days. So it in theory means that you should hit each body part every 2 days. Then if you become advanced, the anabolic window shortens further, and actually then it makes sense to train the entire body every day. So if you're an intermediate lifter and you would like to use body part split workouts, that's the best time to do it. And in general, you can increase your training frequency to more than 3 times a week if you are an intermediate lifter. Just as a side note, I often use training programs with a pretty high training frequency also for beginners, because many beginners are really motivated to get into resistance training, and I don't see any reason just to give them fewer training days. If they want to train, they should train. Then just the volume should be lower in each training session so they can adapt easily and don't get sore all the time. Also, there's another saying regarding compliance. If you have a fixed schedule every day, then it's easier to stick to it and stay on track. Because in most cases, when I've seen people falling off the wagon occasionally, it was mostly on their rest days, when they didn't really know what to do and had maybe not such a strict schedule. That's why, in my opinion, actually also for beginners, a pretty high training frequency can make sense. Then the second point is that when you become an intermediate lifter, you can start lifting heavier. Because most of the time, if you look at beginner training programs, they train in a higher rep range. I know there are some beginner strength training programs out there that train in a 5 rep range or similar. However, I usually don't recommend it, because if someone starts with resistance training, the person should learn proper technique first. And it's better to do if you do lots of reps with lighter weight. Then the risk of injury is lower and also you get the technique better in. When you become more advanced, then you can actually reduce your rep number and increase your weight, because you're more confident with the technique. And this has another advantage, which is also targeting more of your fast twitch muscle fibers. There are genetic differences between people, especially in quads. Some people have more of the slow twitch muscle fibers, other people have more of the fast twitch muscle fibers. And for the people who have more of the fast twitch muscle fibers that respond to higher weight and lower reps, it doesn't make lots of sense to train a lot with low weight and high reps. But as I already mentioned before, it's really different for everyone. And if you want to know how to test it and determine it, I will put a link to an article down below that is on my blog where I explained it. The third point is including periodization. When you are a beginner and start just with resistance training, then you actually can increase weight almost at every session, or maybe every 2 sessions. For example, you start squatting and first you start just with a bar. Then the next training session you may put 5 kilograms more on, then the following one 5 kilograms again. But after a time you just reach a plateau and you can't increase more weight without doing just fewer reps, or that your technique goes really off. And that's when periodization makes sense. I know the word periodization sounds really fancy, but actually it's pretty simple. To make it simpler, periodization means that you train with different weights and in different rep ranges. For example, if 50 kilograms are too heavy for you to train in the 8 rep range, then you can just train with 40 kilograms in the 8 rep range, with 50 kilograms in the 5 rep range, and maybe even with 60 kilograms in the 3 rep range. This way your body adapts to a new training stimulus And it's definitely more beneficial than trying to lift all the time the same weight, and it results also in more strength and muscle gains. There are different models of training periodization. The first one is linear periodization, where you have your training split into 3 different phases: the hypertrophy phase, strength phase, and the strength power phase. During the hypertrophy phase, you usually lift in a higher rep range, which can be about 10 reps, but I've seen also programs that use up to 15 or even 20 reps, but that's more already endurance oriented. Then the strength phase, you usually lift in about the 5 rep range, and then in the power strength phase, you usually lift in a maybe 1 to 3 rep range. The length of each phase can be as long as 6 weeks, which means you would train the first 6 weeks in the 10 rep range, then the second 6 weeks in the 6 rep range or 5 rep range, and then the third 6-week block you will train in a 3 to 1 rep range. Another model is the weekly undulating periodization, where you vary actually on a weekly basis. So you can train, for example, first week for hypertrophy, the second week for strength, and then the third week for strength and power. And then the third model is daily undulating periodization, where you vary your rep range every day. Just to take an example, if you take your training week, you do the first training session in the higher rep range, about 10 rep range for hypertrophy, your second training session in about 5 rep range, and your third training session in, let's say, 3 rep range. If you look at the research on periodization, then in general, weekly or daily undulating periodization is superior in most of the studies to linear periodization. That's why that's also the type of periodization I use for the training programs I design. A side note to the hypertrophy phase, I don't think it makes lots of sense to go above 10 reps for most individuals in the hypertrophy phase. Just because if your goal is to gain muscle and gain strength, you would just push the adaptation towards the endurance side, which is not your goal, because endurance is the opposite of gaining muscle and gaining strength. I hope this video was useful. If you have any questions, just comment down below and let me know. I'm happy to answer them, and see you very soon.